super amazing. He grew up in Khayelitsha, raised by a single mom. He worked for, he became a staff consultant, worked for Bluekey, and went to Germany, and he started so many companies. One of them is smart manufacturing, electronics manufacturing on demand, Sui.ie. And then also now what he's doing is super, super fascinating. They can make any car smart. Pretty much, you come up with your Hyundai i10, like what I'm driving now. Yeah, we make it smart. You can detect, like, hey, pedestrian crossing. You know, all of those things. So what he's doing is pretty amazing, and he's doing it right here in Cape Town. Please, I'd like everybody to put your hands together for Aubrey Mnisi. So, but let's start from the beginning. Tell us about your early stages. You're growing up in the
my name is Aubrey. I know I look
Can
different.
you move the mic closer?
Yeah, I know I look different from the picture. I'm more bearded with brown hair. That was like a year ago. So my name is Aubrey Mnisi. Born and bred in Khayelitsha, beside Bigo M. Currently staying in Habay. That's where I was born.
Where did you go to school there? Like, what was it like?
So
what kind of kid were you?
Yeah, so look, I was brought up by a single parent, which is like a township phenomenon. Like our fathers, for some reason, have a way of escaping. So it's quite a cliche actually, because that's the case with most kids from the township. We don't have our fathers. So I was brought up by a single parent, Mnisi. Went to Ebukanyile. It's a primary, just like in Khayelitsha. As to what kind of kid I was like that quiet kid, in primary, I was like super quiet, always in full uniform.
Oh wow.
My mom always looked after, so we grew up not in the best situations, in the sense that like many other kids from the township, you grew up in a shack, you're poor. But one of the things that I think my mom was great at was to make sure that you can't see that as someone that's not one of us, So you always think, because of the way I like, not really dressed, but how clean I was. Like she made sure the shirt is white, the tie is always proper, the pants are ironed, the shoes are shined. Like every day I had like a haircut all the time, like a proper haircut. So oftentimes, and because of the fact that I was often quiet, people would think, that guy is coming from a well-off family or whatever,
that's quite interesting, because that's such a big similarity. Like I also grew up very quiet, and also like from the village when we went to the city for the first time, lived in a township, like in a one-room town, and then where you have like your best clothes,
exactly,
is a uniform,
exactly,
and your friends like,
you just want to be with uniform, exactly, you just want to be with
you're
uniform.
looking so nice in your suit, that was my school uniform.
Exactly. So it was actually one of those where you preferred wearing a uniform than not, because that's like you're fresh, basically, So went to primary school in Ebukanyile, and from there, any parent in the township wants a better education for the kids. Went to Oaklands High, which is a colored school just between Lansdowne and Claremont. Started there my grade 8.
Is that where you got your accent from? No.
Weirdly not. So I'm gonna touch on that actually, because But anyway, so went to.
Throw you off now. No. Like here, the big thing is about accents. Like people can tell which school you went to. Like if you say soap, it means you went to a Model C school.
So maybe to address that part, so I've traveled a lot. I've been to about 56 cities globally. And I found myself to be in a place where I had to redefine who I am, and just like meeting different people that speak, interact differently, resulted into me forming myself the way I am today, and also just that ability to be you in no relation in terms of who you are when you define yourself. So I think it has a lot to do with that more than a trend or a relation or whatever, you know. So yeah,
I think that's a deep thing you said just there. Define yourself not in relationship in relation to anything.
Yes.
Like a lot of times we are based on something else.
Exactly.
So I'm an accountant.
Exactly.
You know, I am this.
And
I
this
am
acts like this.
a boyfriend.
Exactly.
I am a mother. I am a husband.
Exactly.
And when that changes, then like, who am I?
You know,
really? I'm a Zambian. I'm a foreigner. I'm
exactly.
you know, like, I'm black.
Exactly. So maybe I'll touch a little bit on that because one of the things, like I grew up in a very Christian family, and when I started traveling, a lot of everything I believed to be true kind of got challenged. You know, as in my reality was questioned. You know, because I've somewhat based a lot of my theories. I'm a very, like, I think a lot, you know, like I'm always just thinking about stuff. So a lot of my theories were questioned, you know. And for me, I then got to a point where I'm like, it's time to actually construct my own truth, you know, that's not particularly dependent on the overall truth, if that makes sense, you know, because the overall truth always changes, you know, but you need to stick to your own, no matter what the environment or, you know, the people or the circumstances are, you know. But going back to high school, so I studied in Oakland's High. So I'm not sure if anyone knows Oakland's High. I know there's one guy that's here that went to Oakland's High with me, Mpumzi. So Oakland's High, it was rough, eh? Yeah. Short of a way of explaining it, like, we actually talk about a scenario, one of our friends got shot in the field, you know, at school. People were carrying guns, knives, and so forth, you know. So it was one of the most corrupt high schools in our time. You know, now it looks better actually. I drive there a lot. Yeah, it's rebuilt, you know, everything looks nicer. But in our time, corruption was like, you know, the currency. You know, everyone was just like trying to be as corrupt, well, more corrupt than the next guy, you know. As a result, that's where actually my life started changing, to be very honest with you. Because I remember this one time I was chilling, doing grade, I think I was in grade 9. I was sitting outside in English class. And I couldn't really explain to myself why I was there. You know, I'm a very logical person. As a result, that's the time I quitted. You know, like I left school in standard 7 at the time, grade 9. Took 2 years out, you know, just staying in the township, trying to orientate. Came back 2 years later. This was 2004, because I started school very young, at like 4 years old, started primary, because I could speak, count, and do all the things that, you know, 6, 7-year-olds would do, and I was 4 years old at the time. So my mom was like, let's actually take him to school instead of crash. You know? I mean, the returns were better. So anyways, so quitted school, came back to school 2004. Actually, when I quitted school, I flunked everything apart from maths. So I was a math head.
Because you took a gap year before the gap year.
Exactly. You know, so when I failed everything, actually, this was mid-year 2002, right?
The mic closer.
Oh, sorry. 2001, sorry. You know, and I was very like angry at myself because I've never failed anything. Like primary school, I was like the number one guy. Like throughout primary. So now I'm in high school, I'm like only passing math. I'm like, what the hell's going on? You know, that actually led me to me quitting high school and coming back. When I came back, the only subject I didn't get a distinction in was Afrikaans. By choice. From there, I mean, finished high school. Well, even actually before finishing high school, I started my first business. I was 17 years old. So there was Cambridge University that took out 5 kids from like the southern suburb schools here in Cape Town to form like group of 40, you know. So they picked like the top students, and so I was fortunately one of the top students in my school. This was, I think it was in grade 10.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they took us into this entrepreneur skills building course, you know. And part of the task was the 40 guys that were selected from the 8 schools, 5 per school, we were gonna form like a company, you know,
Okay.
4 companies, meaning that it's 10 people per company, each person serving a particular function.
Yeah.
So I started off as the marketing director, because I used to speak a lot in high school. Primary was very quiet.
You know, it really, like, what you're talking about, like, similar for me. Like, I was very quiet growing up, but only that I didn't start talking a lot until varsity. Like, actually, maybe final year. Maybe after I'd finished.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So for me, I started like talking a lot. I think just being open. When I came back to high school, you know, I used to literally go to, you know, those boardrooms where you find all the high school teachers sitting there chatting. I'd be literally standing in the middle, just entertaining them, talking like all the weird stuff you can think of, you know. So I think that's when I actually started expressing myself more, you know. But then this program, so the task was we either create a product or we get a product for us to resell, you know. So what we decided to do in our company, we created a company called Smoochies, which was a lip balm company. So we did the whole waxing, you know, like the mixing of ingredients, waxing, packaging, and putting it into these like you know, small plastic packages to sell in trains, buses, literally anywhere.
Oh,
you
wow.
know? So the whole thing like went on for about 9 months. When it died out, we had so much traction that everyone in the bus used to call me Strawberry because they used to sell a strawberry lip balm, you know. So from there, I spoke with one of my childhood friends' brother-in-law at the time. You know, I was like, "Hey Joe, there's this thing I've been doing, man. You know, and I know how to raise money because we were taught how to raise money, how to da-da-da, you know. So everyone is asking me about lip balms, you know. And I don't have the capital, you know, to put it together. I think Sandra wants to.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So anyways, so this guy had the confidence in me, invested 2,000 rands at the time to like, you know, start the company again. So started the company, had amazing traction till I left university. Got to university CPT. So when I got to CPT, because one of my best friends at the time, his sister was an accountant. She studied management accounting from CPT.
Yeah.
So she was the only example that existed in the township of someone that had went to university. You know, so I did management accounting too because she was great with numbers and I was great with numbers too. Okay, cool. That's the future because she was like she had a house in different places. Her life seemed pretty, you know, organized and somewhat successful in conventional terms. You know, so I did accounting. So in my first year, we started an NGO, me and my friends. Called Fantastic Five. It was like 5 of us. We thought we were really amazing and fantastic. We called it Fantastic Five. So the whole thing behind it was a soup kitchen. We like, you know, made a soup kitchen at CPT, you know, to cook for our fellow students. But we quickly ran out of money. So the whole thing, we handed over to one of our friends' grandmother. So what had happened was...
So you guys ran out of money and then you give it to grandma?
Yes, because she had a crash. She was already looking out
like
for
what?
kids.
You exited your company to you.
Exactly, you know. So from there, one of the, like at the time, so just like maybe taking it from top down.
Yeah.
At the time, the sensations were the Durban rocks, Cape Town rocks, whatever rocks. I'm not sure if you guys remember those t-shirts, you know. So we started doing our own t-shirts as well. You know, they were called Hoodlum, you know. Literally about embracing where you're from. Hoodlum is in my hood, my township, you know. So we started off in Mbekweni, in Paarl, went to Galanga, Khayelitsha. But while we were executing this business, one of the things, so I did management accounting. So one of the things that I noted was that through the discussions we had, and just like the obvious things we noticed was that we're all printing t-shirts that we bought from the same person, which is Fitties. in observatory, right? So we're like, wait, how about we create our own t-shirts, so that we are competitive, and be different to the other people. So we created a division that was manufacturing based called casual trading, and we moved away completely from screen printing to to manufacturing. So we did the entire process of cutting, making, and trimming.
Oh, wow.
Did different cards, custom cards. Eventually, our competitors were our customers. One of the guys that we were started the company with decided that he's gonna, while we're working and he's in Nepal looking after the money, decided that spending the money is the best thing while we're working. So I mean, we're literally, working in entrepreneurial terms, busting our asses in Cape Town, and he was in Nepal spending the money and everything. But then we find out eventually, and the whole energy, because it was a hyper energy business based, because we all just invested because we liked each other and our energies were right, and we're like, okay, cool, we want to change, the whole trend around t-shirts. We want to start now doing t-shirts with different trims, different blah blah, and they were like flipping amazing at the time, So that business went down because of the fact that our energies were destroyed by this guy spending the money while we were working.
Yeah. So, and what were some of the lessons from that?
I mean, so the lessons from that, I think every time you do something, you need to kind of stop and look around you, because oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we tend to be autonomous, because it's like a drug, You just go in, you see results, you just keep on going in, you keep on going in. You actually take a moment and look around you and just audit everything, and look at, okay, whatever that has happened, that has it actually happened, So we kind of overlooked that due to trust we had amongst each other. As a result, we got to where we were,
And you've actually started a number of them. Now, tell us about the electronics on demand.
Okay.
Sui. Yeah.
Sui, yes. So Sui, how Sui came about, 2012, I moved to Germany. So I started a company just after I finished university. I worked for a company called Bluekey, as you mentioned, for 2 years. I came in as a junior accountant, but then I didn't really like accounting because it was hyper identical to what was happening in the classroom. So that irritated me, seriously, it irritated. I was like, where's the surprise? What's going on? So anyway, because fortunately the company I was working for, Bluekey Software Solutions, was a software company selling SAP products like SAP Business One, SAP R3, SAP All-in-One. I then started, I asked the boss, they had an open door policy, how do I become like the other guys, which were the consultants, they were coming in and out, no one cared.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to be this guy. Why am I sitting here? So anyway, so the guy was like, you know what, if you want to be these guys, you need to learn X, Y, Z, which is programming, Learned a bit of programming at the time, which was ABAP, SQL, DBA, database administration. Then, within a couple of months, I was actually a solid consultant that I got certified as a SAP application associate. And it just didn't make sense to make, say, 80K and to get 6K. I was like, what's going on here? Then I resigned, started my own company called Palgrave here in Ops, Lome, which did something very similar, sold, implemented, and supported SAP products.
Yeah.
So the company went incredibly well, had one of my classmates, Shannon Agalas, to join us. And a lot of things that I assumed were proven right at the time, And I was like, if I can do this, maybe if I do this, it will work out probably the same. So I left the company in the hands of Shannon, and I started traveling, right? So traveled, bit of Europe, spent some time in Dublin, Amsterdam, Paris, Lausanne, Switzerland, then eventually settled in Germany, Hamburg. Started a company called Dataset. So Dataset started off really as a clone of what we're doing in Cape Town, selling, implementing, and supporting SAP products like business management softwares.
Yeah.
But then imagine this, if you were to come to the United States, go to the United States in 10 years, right? All the guys that are in the mobile development sector, like mobile app development, will probably be like 40 or 50. So imagine yourself being 22, you know? So you're in this boardroom with like old guys, you know? So that irritated me a lot because I was always the young guy in the room, you know, it's like 50 plus years, because SAP actually, people started like innovating in Germany like in 1983, 1984. So all the guys from back then were in the boardrooms, you know? So these are like old guys with gray hair and so forth. I was like, I hate this, you know? But at the time, what was like picking up was mobile apps, you know? So I caught on to mobile apps, learned Python. At the time, Python was a thing.
Where was that? Because Python is the thing now. Hashtag.
Oh yes, it is a thing
Python
now.
thing.
But like when it like started getting introduced, more or less the same time when Swift by Apple came out,
Wow.
Python was picking up as well as at the time. So I learned Swift as well and Python.
Wow.
But then I just realized that it was a trend. You know, everyone was like, I wanna, and I tried to not be that guy that wants to be like the next guy.
Yeah.
So what we then changed the company to DataSet, we changed it to something we called adaptive workplace, right? Where the whole vision behind it was to combine people and machines to work in unison, right? And Germans could understand this very well because they are very efficiency, optimization crazy, you know? So my thing was like, people are working in silo and machines are working in silo. What somewhat acts as the connective tissue is that job card that I get to go to the machine, you know? So how about we build a technology that somewhat combines the person and the machine, you know? So that was literally like coming up with a new business model, leveraging on technology. So I pitched this idea to a guy in Hamburg, and he was like, yo, I like you, you're crazy, but I really like you, you know? And I think Hamburg is not the place for you. You need to go to Berlin, right? But before you move to Berlin, I want to invite you to this thing in Switzerland, in Geneva, you know, at CERN.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they have this thing, the Atlas.
Yeah.
So it's like where they study parallel or alternative universe once a year. Scientists gather together, and of course science fanatics would go there, and people would study the output of the collision of molecules, you know. So while I was there, I met two incredible guys, Ben and Radu. And from us just meeting, we kind of like clicked, you know, but their thing was connecting the rest of the world to the Chinese market, right? And my thing was optimizing the shop floor, you know? So it made a lot of sense for us to kind of like fuse together, you know? So we fused together. The company at the time, SUI, was called Circuitive. Then we kind of like remodeled it, reworked it, we called it SUI. Because what we noticed is we went to Web Summit, I think 2014, and no one could pronounce the word Circuitive, you know? Like everyone was like, what's your company again? It's like, no, it's Circuitive. Like, huh? It's like Circuitive, like a circuit board, but like Circuitive? Like, huh? You know? Like, okay, cool. So we founding the company in Switzerland, let's just call it SUI. You know, it's easy to pronounce SUI. SWI, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
But
what did you start? Like, what is the business model? What is SUI?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the whole thinking behind SUI is that, think of it this way. When we think about Industry 4.0, we call it 4IR today in South Africa, right? The fourth industrial revolution.
Yes.
So when you think about
there's
it,
lots of money for that.
I know. But like, when we think about it, is that we tend to, as usual, think of the consumption side of things. For example, there's reports there will be 1 trillion devices connected by 2020. You know, there will be an amount of new devices in circulation, right? But in our analysis, no one was actually thinking about the supply. You know, because if you're telling me that we have 1 trillion connected devices by 2020, what are we doing today to change the manufacturing landscape to make it so agile that it accommodates that future? you know? So that's what we're answering. We're like, you know what, let's change the manufacturing landscape so that, because what's gonna happen is that if we continue the way we're continuing as humanity, the creators, the makers, the IP owners of the future will be the same guys owning the IP today.
Yeah.
Your Steve Jobs, your, like that handful of guys, you know? And our thing was like, that's actually wrong if we think about it like from a democratized perspective. That if we say we're gonna have new possibilities, new technologies, why aren't we including people? You know, like have an inclusive like departure from the present to the future, you know? So what we built was a platform that allows literally anyone, including my grandmother, to go into a website, find a product they like, click order, and that gets manufactured for them, delivered at their doorstep. Last mile effect, right?
Oh, wow.
So technically, how does it work? You know? So imagine, for instance, one of my friends in Berlin, he worked for BCG, right? BCG is like consulting firm, like your McKinsey and so forth. So his grandmother used to have like strokes. You know, she'd have a stroke, but everyone is at work or whatever, and she'd fall and they'd come after the fact, and it's not the prettiest situation to arrive at, you know? So we're like, okay, well, how do we then solve this? We're like, let's use SWE, because we're claiming that in SWE, you don't have to be an engineer for you to create a hardware product, right? An IoT product, an Internet of Things product, you know? So what we then did, we developed a device that his grandmother would put around her wrist, of course picking up like the variables, the data that the body gives, and then of course we make out what's the most appropriate response from it, right? So how we achieved that, we partnered up with a design house, partnered up with a company called, it's a startup by Altium. I'm not sure if there's any electronics fans here. So Altium is like an EDA tool. That's where you design all electronics. So before this thing becomes this thing, it's like in schematics, in like design files, and so forth, in Gerber files and all of that. So we partnered up with these guys so that we can use the EDA while at the same time we had some design houses that could, for instance, this guy that I'm talking about could talk to this design house and help him conceptualize it, and the output of that is to get the files that are needed for production, right? And then you upload those files into our platform, but then our platform, what it does, it strips away from those files that you've updated or uploaded, it strips away the configuration data, right? So today, for example, if you're producing a MacBook Air and you want to produce an iPhone 10 in the same assembly line, right? It's going to take you about half a day of it's called changeover. Right? So the changeover is like 4 hours, that's the industry standard, and that's actually what makes electronics expensive to produce.
I remember when we were learning operations and during the MBA, like half of ops was about changeovers.
Exactly.
Because a lot of time goes to that, and why companies will say we only do 100 of these or 1,000 of these.
Exactly.
Because the changeover takes just as much time as the production.
Exactly, you know? So our thing was, how do we decrease the change over time, just so people can be able to afford prototyping, you know, to afford creating new products. So what we then did was to build algorithms, or rather a neural network, as they call it today, that's able to say, okay, Aubrey uploaded these files, and let's take the setup data, the configuration data from these files, and then identify in our pool of manufacturers. So we partnered up with manufacturers, gave them our technology, our smart manufacturing technology, so that when I upload my design files, the website intelligently, or the algorithms rather, intelligently decide which manufacturer to choose, you know? So this is based on the grading, certifications required, as well as the last mile effect, how close and far are they, as well as the integrated supply chain that we have in the platform. So when you click order, for example, what happens is that we scan through the configuration data, we put it aside, then we scan through your bill of material, and then we order those components for you from guys like your DigiKey and all the other electronics suppliers, and then we send that to the manufacturer, right? So when it gets to the factory somewhat already knows that the stock is here, and then that gets put into a smart bin location, like a bin location. Yeah. You put it in there, so you have your PC, your like materials, and as you like going into the factory, because you're in an industrial watch with a GPS, and of course you are in our work plan, we're able to say, you need to actually put this material in this bin location, and that bin location is like blinking for you. Then you put your materials. Not sure if you know the materials in electronics, how they look. They're in that reel, like like the.
Not all of them. I learned a lot of them in class.
Yeah. So as a result of being able to strip the configuration data, tell the machines what to do, how to do it, for who, and when should it do it for. While of course integrating the employee into the workflow and integrating them to the environment. So if we have smart bin locations, that bin location needs to talk to the person so that the person knows where to go. So it's like the most efficient way of working. We're able to reduce the 4 hours to about 7 minutes, right? Wow. What that means is that instead of now an assembly line being able to produce 2 products in a day from one assembly line, we can do like 10, 50, and 80, at 1/10 of the cost. Right?
Wow. So I think like this is, I like this because like a real application of what people a lot of times will string along as, the buzzwords they put together, IoT, AI, fourth industrial revolution, industry 4.0, all of that. And I like that using all of that, but to solve a real problem.
Exactly.
And that's what people pay for. Tell us now about SENSORIT.
Okay, so SENSORIT is actually a very interesting story behind it. So I was super excited to bring Sui to South Africa. So I just told you guys an incredible company, right? We founded, I'm the co-founder, I'm super excited. Like, I want to take this back home, and everyone's going to be blown out their head, and all the manufacturers are going to adopt it, right?
Yes, as entrepreneurs.
Exactly. Like the future is always like 10 out of 10, right?
Yes.
So I get to say, all the manufacturers are like, well, this sounds great, but I'm not really prepared to change my manufacturing way to accommodate a solution, or rather to adopt an agile manufacturing solution for a market that is still as it was 20 years ago. What I mean by that, this TV you have behind you, I think it's JVC or something, what's that? LG, right? So if you put a JVC next to it, they'll look absolutely different, right? But inside the PCBA is the same thing, right? Which is the printed circuit board assembly. It's the same thing. So what that means from a manufacturing landscape point of view is that we're having a repetitive manufacturing landscape, right? You're producing the same things over and over. It's just a major planning exercise that goes into it, right? So what this, of course, means is that we don't need any agile manufacturing solutions or any new solutions, because if you're talking to Grand Telumet in Tukai, for example, they only do DSTVs, right? And that's actually what they're happy about, and some government contracts, right? So I was like, okay, cool. So what kind of like forces the landscape to be like this? There's no maker community, You don't have anyone waking up in the morning being like, I want to create this device, right? You don't have anyone being like, I want to innovate and create, I don't know, whatever, As a result, we don't have hardware innovation or electronics innovation where people can now influence the manufacturing landscape or force it to change, because there's just so many of us that have incredible ideas that we want to prototype and like batch produce, mass produce, and of course, as a result, change the manufacturing landscape. So I was like, okay, cool. I want to champion this. I want to try and change the landscape, right? So we tried to pick a very obvious problem, right? So we started with three startups right? This was 3 years ago. So one was in the smartwatch space, so that we can create so much demand that we can go back to manufacturer A and be like, hey, Mr. Manufacturer, we have 100,000 people wanting to buy this device. Produce these devices, and therefore you have to buy this technology, you know? And the other product was smart security system, you know, something closely similar to Ujonga, the IoT company, the motion detection IoT company. And the other one was SENSORIT, which was in the automotive space. So the other two wasn't exciting, wasn't really that much exciting for me, because when I looked at the numbers, not monetary numbers, but like the impact numbers, like the automotive one seemed staggering, right? We're like, we have to do this. Why? Because in South Africa today, we have about 800,000 road traffic crashes on a yearly basis, right? Collisions. And this results into 2 million South Africans minor or fatally injured, right? In turn, the government spends around about 143 billion rands a year. That's about 3.4% of our GDP, right? So I got excited, like, this is a problem, you know? Let's get to it, let's try it. Let's use IoT to solve it, you know? But of course, one of our immediate reactions or thoughts were, it's because in South Africa we have a very big bribing culture. Everyone in the room knows this, you know? We buy our driver's license. You know? That's a fact. I'm not even gonna, you know, like,
I want one. I still have my Zambian one. It's so difficult to renew.
I think the queue is on the other side.
Thank you. Do I have to go through all the tests, or I can just?
No, you have to. For formality.
No, right? We should connect me to the people who can make me skip the queue.
Yeah. So check this. Amazingly, we thought South Africans are like these really bad drivers. South Africans are these bribers, and we just like reckless on the road. That's why we have so much accidents. But to find through extensive research that we actually not. The reason is that the human has evolved, but our cars haven't evolved as much, right?
And humans evolving now, like they walk around looking at their cell phones and just with their headphones as well.
For example, the level of accessibility or availability of information is like 1,000% more than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But the car is still the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you drive in your car, there's a notification coming. 10 years ago, that didn't happen. You know, you have Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp call. Like, it's just so easy to get distracted that in Europe, as early as 2006, they started enforcing policies in the automotive space. Hence, they created something called DAS, which is driver assistance systems, which is your PDC. Like, every car that leaves an assembly line, there's a certain technology that it needs to have, you know? But in South Africa, because of the cost element, we overlook that. Because if we're enforcing it from a policy level, it means that we are agreeing that cars should be expensive, and everyone's okay with it, you know? Exactly, you know. So we still keep our cars as rudimentary as possible, to extent so if you drive an I-10 in Cape Town, South Africa, and you drive an I-10 in Germany, it's two different cars. One has lane assist and all this fancy new technology, while this one has an aux cable. Seriously, that's the contrast, you know? So our exercise was, okay, cool. How do we then, you know, strip technology away from the car, right? Because what makes the driving assistive is not the car, but the tech. You know, how do we strip away the tech, retrofit it into a rudimentary car, make it as intelligent as that new car? You know, did a bit of, you know, trial and error, bit of investing, bit of research, bit of, you know, building to a point where we then came up with this device, 2016. That you could mount, like, retrofit into your car, and as you're driving, it runs machine vision processing algorithms, it analyzes the environment, and alerts the driver of any like environmental feedback. You know, so for example, if I'm driving, say, 120 kilometers for the last 100 nanoseconds, and there's the guy on the left and the right, they've been driving 200, I don't care, 135 per kilometers per hour for the last 200 nanoseconds. Using machine learning, we can then understand the environmental variables as well as the behavior, and then predict the possible behavior from them, and therefore loop the driver in to either accelerate, decelerate, change lanes, and so forth. So we got really, really, appreciative by the advancements in machine vision technology. It has advanced so tremendously, so much. Like if you look at a company that used to analyze CDs, like AI goes as way back as the guys that had that camera with some intelligence to see if a CD coming out of a production line is proper or not to be sold, So because of the advancements in the space, we're able to build our first product, piloted with ABSA, pilot failed. Lost a lot that year, lost my grandmother actually to 2016, lost a big contract as well. But then for me, it was one of those things where, as a startup founder, you have to, as I said earlier, kind of have to stop and be like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And one of the things that we picked up to be doing wrong at the time was that we're so fixated on safety that we thought that's the only thing to focus on, While in actual fact, in South Africa, in Africa, as a matter of fact, as much as safety is a thing, infotainment is more of a thing than safety. So okay, cool. How do we then upgrade a Mazda 323, give it the best infotainment in the world, right? And then give it advanced driver assistance systems technology, right? While we, of course, maintaining a relatively low cost of the product. So went back to the drawing board, iterated, further developed software, as well as iterated in the hardware as well, to a point where we came up with a device like a head unit display and a smart rear view mirror that you mount onto your car. As you're driving, it's analyzing the environment, it tells you, loops you in, but of course you can give your car Wi-Fi, you can remote onto your car, you can take remote pictures, remote videos, live stream the experience if you want to make sure that your wife, kid is safe. So that's the time we actually started seeing traction, But more so, just like now, taking a couple of step backs. For me, when I came back to South Africa, one of the things that stood out was that I couldn't believe how much we're not creating and how much we think everything is complicated, And SENSORIT, for me, to be very honest with you, it was built purely on the basis that I'd like to show other entrepreneurs how easy it is to create a startup and have it mega successful. Right? So, it's our business case that I always talk to, even when I'm mentoring people or just talking about entrepreneurship, hey, listen, I started this company from zero, with nothing. And look at what we've done.
You didn't get funding.
So
why I'm talking about that, that's a question I get a lot. Startup grant, do you give funding? Meaning, the real question is that, startup grant, do you give money where there are no expectations, free money, you just take and go, So tell us about that, funding and obsession with funding. I can't do anything because...
So, I only received investment into my company last year, and I've been doing business since I was 17.
And then when you got the investment, was it just, I'm thinking of doing that? Or it was, you have some traction?
So I had some traction. We've been building the business for 2.5 years. And for me, more than the money, it was more of the person giving the money, Because for me, it's, because there's dumb money, there's institutional stupid money, and there's smart money. You don't want to be taking dumb money just because you need money, you take money. You don't want that, because that can actually be detrimental to your startup. Because
I think also that is not emphasized enough, because entrepreneurs think money is money is money, and that to understand that you can get dumb money and you can get bad money. So it's money that you just get, and the investor doesn't give any further value
then within 6 months the money is finished. Now you have this shareholder has nothing.
No, straight. Like,
you just want to control things and yeah.
So just building on that, like there's a very famous property developer and investor in Joburg. So he heard about us, called us out to a meeting in Joburg, was super excited, wanted to put 10 million rands into a company at the valuation we gave him. That's rare, right?
Wow.
I was like, I'm excited about this guy, right? But I want to have more meetings with him just so I can understand him as a person. And one of the things I realized that made me not take the 10 million rands was that he thought startups were property. You flip it, right? You put 0, you get 1 back. You put 1, you get, it doesn't work like that, you know? Oftentimes, it works actually in the contrary of the expectations, you know? Because everything is like the perfect world, then you start doing the thing, it's the real world, then you get a different result, then you need an investor that's gonna be like, you know what, I've decided to walk this journey with you. I get the different response that you've got, you know, and I know it's not particularly just on you because there's like market feedback. There's a lot of things that you can't control as the entrepreneur. So you need someone that kind of gets that, you know, someone that understands you're not just building to make money, you're actually building to make impact, you know. And sometimes if you want to make money, you can make a lot of different decisions, you know, that will make sure that you have that positive balance sheet or positive P&L, you know, while at the end, it's not really about that because anyone can make money. I always say this to most people actually, anyone can make money. If I wanted to make money, I would go to the robots and start selling flipping potatoes. No, I'm serious. Like anyone can make money. There's no secret to it, you know. Anyone can make money, but it's how do you then have impact while you making money, you know? Make money, make impact, be happy with what you do, but at the same time be able, of course, in the capitalist system, to pay for it, you know? It shouldn't be the other way around where it's the money first and then everything else secondary.
Yeah,
you know?
Brilliant. And we're going to start taking questions, so prepare your questions. And I think like what you said is, your story is amazing, and I know there are a lot of other stories, and we are like out of time already. But one of the things you mentioned around just when you're working with with SENSORIT, you focus on one thing, you make an assumption that the big driver is this, and then you realize with feedback that it's not.
Exactly.
You know, and then you change, and then in the end you give people what they want. We had this conversation earlier where some of the entrepreneurs I've met is they actually say, no, but the customers are dumb, you know, customers stupid. Or how can investors understand me? So it's all about them as opposed to understanding what the customers want.
So I have a very good example of that. When we were building Sweden, right? We all came together, it was the 3 of us, put together our time and money, right? We built, because we thought we were all like smart guys, all 3 of us, right? We thought what we're building is what the customers actually want. So we built a feature-bloated product, right? It does everything, you know? And you find that customers actually use like 2% of that stuff. And that's the quickest way to burn money actually. Because you spend hundreds of thousands of euros, millions of rands, into building this mega machine. And people are just like interested in that tiny bit of it, you know? But at the time, like you've done with the product dev, you've burnt the money, you need to, you know, maintain the product, basically, almost use a very weird word, ass out. Like, like you find yourself like broke, you know? Which is like one of the things that happened to us actually, you know, at some point, where we found ourselves broke, but we have an incredible product, you know? And for me, just like closing on that note, you know, more so just like on the note, I know like people here, one of the homies actually mentioned that he would like to start his own company. How does he go about it? I mean, for me, it's finding the best co-founders, right? But I also think it's about finding the best co-founders where there is no overlap of superpowers, right? Because we all have superpowers, all of us. I truly believe that. I don't care if you guys don't believe it. All of us have superpowers.
We're from Wakanda, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know?
I got vibranium at home.
Exactly. You know? So yeah, I mean, just like closing the point.
No, brilliant. While we take questions,
what would be like 3 things you would tell an entrepreneur here? Like, what are the things that a lot of people believe that you don't believe? Like, maybe 1 thing or 5 things or whatever. What are the things that a lot of people say but you don't agree with?
Wow. So, I don't know, like my head is wired in a way that if I hear something, immediately I think of the opposite way of doing it. You know, it has become so much me that by default it's like a reflex.
Cool.
You know?
Do it.
But I think like the top 3 things for me is, it's like growing up in poverty. The only thing that will take you out of poverty is that you need to understand your situation. You need to have proper comprehension of what you're dealing with, you know? And therefore, you need to isolate your reasoning to people's ideologies, you know? Understand the situation for what it is than what you think the next guy understands it to be. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's point 1. I mean, point 2, I think it's just, we're all trying to figure it out, man, you know?
Yeah.
Because when I went to Germany, I had this impression that Germans have it figured out because they built SAP. SAP is an incredible software. I worked with this company called Bayers, which was like an add-on to SAP, you know? I used to do like software engineering for them, like systems engineering, like specifically. And one of the things I realized is that these guys don't know what they're doing, to be very honest with you. And they're just figuring it out.
Yeah. But
like, seriously.
They do it confidently.
They do it with so much confidence that you're like, what? So these guys, they know what they're doing. But 10 out of 10, to be very honest with you, they don't know what they're doing, you know? You just need to go, like one of my friends, like they typically say, like, I'm the head first kind of guy. I go head first, then reason later, you know? So I'm literally like that, like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Looks like it's something that we should be doing, let's do it, you know? Third one, I think, is the only thing that can't lie to you is your gut feeling. You know? Always listen to that. I don't care if there's a big check in front of you that says take the money or leave the job, whatever. Just do proper self-analysis and try and understand what you genuinely feel like. Like, what do you feel like, you know? More than what he thinks or what would my mom thinks if I make this decision.
What it would look like.
Exactly, you know? Okay. So just like follow your own, I think, instincts and feeling.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to take questions now.
Aubrey, Hassan from CapH. How are you doing?
From?
CapH. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, boss.
Thanks for the insights. I just want to latch on to that last point that you made about you had this amazing product, bloated, and no one was really buying it.
Yes.
How did you get down to getting back to the drawing board, stripping out the bloat, and actually finding something that would actually take up, that the market would actually buy into, and also how long did it take you to actually get to that point to get it into market?
To get the whole product to market.
You know, to get to the point where you say, this is it, now let's take it to market.
I'm with you. I mean, one of the beautiful things about having a startup or being a startup founder is that you have shorter feedback loops, right? And therefore you have shorter iteration cycles, you know? And therefore, which is what we call agility or agile, you know? So a lot of that coupled with analytics that you get, you know, from how people use your product, you can then see what actually people are using the product for, you know? So what we started doing, we started focusing on what people were using the platform for, which is ordering, you know? We created like DFM, which is direct manufacturer communication, you know? For example, if I want to produce a laptop, send it to a factory, and the manufacturer is like, there's a transistor missing, for example, in this whole thing. Let's call Aubrey. Typically that takes like a couple of hours to a day, you know? So we focus on building easier communications around that and all those things that don't matter, you know? And then we started focusing on what actually matters. How long did that take? The whole team. So what happened is that one of our co-founders and CEO at Sui is Ben Tsai. He's Chinese, so we kind of like forced him, all of us, to move back to China so that he can focus on the business, grow a team in China. And then we all moved to China, all the team, we stayed in China, ranging from 3 to 6 to 9 months, depending on the skill that was needed or the demand of the person then, you know. So it took about 9 months to be like, here's a product that everyone is ready to actually, you know, use.
Hi everyone, hi Aubrey. I just want to ask you, so in my personal capacity at the moment, I feel stuck, right?
Yes.
So what I've done, I've created this app which can be used for like my city, Golden Arrow, Yavaya and Chelsea. So people can actually live check their buses. If the driver gets stuck somewhere, they can push the notification. Right? But now, my problem is, the app is there, but as like me, I don't know where to go, how to get the big guys. Like, I know like the app can get further improvements, like put where people can actually, instead of going to shops to buy their bus credits, you can actually do it on the app. So it's already there. But now, how does one go about the whole process until you get to the big guys? Because it takes a lot for someone to say they want to talk to Brendan, but Brendan is just a university student. Like, how does one, in that the practical way to get your product there? Like, that's where I feel like I'm stuck. The product is functioning everything, but how do you get to the guys?
Yes. So I think a functioning product is one thing, you know, especially with apps. You know, so one of the things that how I think of apps is that apps are a new thing, right? Let's get that straight. The world existed without apps. Business models existed without apps. Solutions were there without apps. So my thing, before I build any app or go into any app discussion that needs to be built, can you create the same business without an app? Right? Do you need a call center for you to be able to facilitate that business? You know, just go through the viability study of that idea or business, you know, because apps are new. They're literally less than like 20 years old, you know. So if you want to say, I can create an app and therefore I think there's a need, you know, that's the wrong way to go about it. That's what, I'm not really saying that's what you've done, but I'm just trying to highlight that when you look at your app, can you like kill your servers tomorrow and start a call center where people text you via WhatsApp and be like, where's my bus? You know, are people in such a pain point that they would actually do that? You know, that's where the value is sitting, because you're actually solving a problem using technology as a tool, more than creating a tool as a solution for maybe an unexisting problem, you know, or a fictitious problem, you know, but it just becomes real because there's an app behind it, you know. So that's one thing. Second thing is, as someone that has created businesses with like close to nothing, you know, one thing that makes a business successful is willpower, right? Your willpower, like your drive to want to see it succeeding, you know? So one of the things that I think are critical when you start any business is try to talk to the guy that feels the most pain from what you are trying to solve. That's the guy that's gonna give you that kickstart in terms of resources, in terms of anything, because he understands what you're solving. He knows exactly the problem that you're trying to address. And therefore for him, it's actually, the opportunity cost is much higher. The less he gets involved, the less he's trying to, you know, help you, the more he's incurring the same problem, you know? And therefore get the interested person in what you're trying to do, you know, that they help you materialize your app, you know? But a new thing, just closing off, I'm not sure if I've answered you, like the new thing today, so about 6 years ago, the best thing was collaboration, right? There were platforms like Trello was becoming a thing. There were like a lot of web-based collaborative tools because the internet was making the world one place and people wanted to collaborate. Hence, those companies at the time had high valuation, right? But now, what's the big thing is partnerships, right? Because we've also realized that things are moving way quicker than we can, right? But there's a guy that's actually doing this already, you know, in the most like amicable way possible, you know? Instead of you trying to be him, invite him to the party, you know, and be like, let's bundle this, form a much more stronger proposition, you know? so that our uptake is easy, or our sales pitch, elevator pitch, is more sexy, you know? So I'm not sure if I've answered you, bro.
Yeah, cool.
Yes.
Thanks.
Hi, Aubrey. I know you also have a VC that you haven't told us about much yet. Could you maybe give us a bit of background around that and what you look for in entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So it's not actually a VC, just to correct you, but I'll just dive in more on it. So when I moved back to Cape Town, I became part of this ecosystem where I met some of the guys here actually called Rise in Woodstock Exchange. And I was one of the mentors for Techstars, for like the cohort that they had in 2017. But one of the disappointing things, I was super excited to be back, gonna change stuff, take SA to the next level. Every time I was in a tech ecosystem, and Cape Town is deemed to be the tech hub, the best tech ecosystem in Africa, is that there was no black people. Literally, you go anywhere in Cape Town, you go to Rise, you come here, Workshop 17, you go to everywhere, there's 0 black people. So that irritated me a lot, right? As a result, we founded a space called Black Unicorns in Hard Bay. So me and my friend Carl, that's not here today, he's going to pitch at the MTN App of the Year award tomorrow. We started a space called Black Unicorns. So a unicorn is $1 billion like startup, right? So our whole aim behind it was, how do we create $1 billion black startups, hence Black Unicorns, right? So fortunately for us, after shopping around Hard Bay, we found a space, like a 600 square meter space, that's like a compound fashion, where you have 4 one-bedroom apartments in one, each one bedroom serving, in our mind, a different vertical. So we have content monetization, we have software engineering, we have hardware engineering, and we have a co-working space, right? So these one bedrooms, the bedroom is for sleeping, the lounge is for working, meetings, and so forth, right? So it literally started off as me and Carl being fed up in the space we were working at, starting our own working space, just getting a bigger space, and opening up to everyone that's black. And, well, black is primary, but anyone can come. Right? No, like, I'm saying that because that's literally how Cape Town is shaped today.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing, it's just a systematic thing where white is primary. You go to all the spaces, amazing spaces, but you just don't find black people. Transports are hard, like transport costs are high. They get there, they need to pay flipping 400 rands a day for a day pass, and all these things, that actually keep a person that's just trying to build a company from entering, So this space, we created it. So one of the things that kind of like gave it an uptake was that we invited some of our friends from Europe, like some guys that I've met in Europe in the ecosystem, to come and hack 10 black companies with us for like a month, right? So we picked companies like my friends' companies, people that I know. We invited these engineers from France to come here. Actually, Adrian, your colleague, that's his friend. So his colleague, we started my first company together in Europe together, Dataset, we co-invested together. So anyway, so these guys came, we invited people, some of the people that are in the room. We started hacking these companies. The hack was done, we threw a craziest party in Clifton, 4th Beach, super dope. But then we started getting like guys like our ordinary, being like, the energy is great, the people are awesome, I want to be here, So like, cool, come work with us, under one condition, you're going to bring your own company or your own project that you're excited about, right? So that while you're helping us build what we're building, we're helping you build what you're building. For instance, this company is Sabando, but he's also biz dev for SENSORIT, he's front-end engineer for Snake Nation, right? One of the companies there. So it's like cross-pollination of skills, right? So, like naturally, when like the more companies or people we got into the space, the more a need for cash was eminent, And fortunately, at the time last year, I've just closed a round for SENSORIT, and I spoke with my investor, and it kind of like resonates a lot with what I do. You know, I was like, hey man, there's like black unicorns. This is super exciting. You know, I can't sleep. I think about it all the time. I want to help. I want to do. I want to blah. You know, it's like, oh flip. I want to be part of it as well. You know, because he's excited as I am. So, we're like, okay, cool. Let's create a funding arm of the black unicorns, so that we can help the companies inside us. So that's where the fund discussion is coming from. But the basic principle behind it in Xhosa, you would say ikala ekhaya, meaning that it starts at home. Therefore, we focusing on the companies that are inside the unicorn space, which is about 14 companies, 14, ranging from content to production to AI to IoT to e-commerce, you know. So we do all sorts of stuff, you know. But the space is very brotherhood.
No sisterhood.
No. There is a sister. We have a sister. You know. Of course, also trying to address the lack of females in the tech ecosystem, but it's literally all of it is based on energy and love. You know, like most of the people that are there because of the energy.
Yeah.
You know, because literally what keeps everyone going is just like the energy, like let's do it, let's get it working, let's keep on grinding, you know.
How do you know that your startup is investor ready, avoiding bad investments and the sloppy money and the bad money? How do you know that you're able to get a proper investor?
So the easiest way, most conventional answer to that is go through your investor readiness analysis, you know, where you gauge if your company is investor ready. There's like certain methods that have been recommended by avid entrepreneurs globally and investors, you know. But my answer to that is build, they'll come.
Nice.
Just keep on building, Maji, like on the rails. Build with whatever you have. Investors will find you. Like how I found my investor, for example, today. A guy that I was piloting with, you know, at ABSA, he was like, Flip, dude, you don't run out of energy. You know, we just told you no the other day, and you're here again, and this thing is working now. You know, how do we harness this energy, blah, blah, but then he was able to then link me with other people because he could see that this guy is actually just going regardless, you know, but he just needs someone to walk the journey with him, you know. So for me, I think other people's money is the last thing you should be looking for, you know. You should be looking for money from customers.
Yeah.
That's where the money is, Machi. Like, get the customers to pay you instead of you getting money to get the customer, you know, because you spend so much time as in, like, there's a time where I really felt angry when I did this deal with this guy in Joburg for 10 million rand. I got so angry at the end of the process that I felt that I've lost so much time trying to get the deal working instead of developing the business, you know? So I think that's where your energies need to be as an entrepreneur, where you just building, you know, just testing your hypothesis, you know, and test, and the more closer you are to that being true, the more closer you are to getting someone to assist you, you know, because everybody, like, there's tons and tons of millionaires in South Africa that are just looking to work with young entrepreneurs, you know. But the problem is that we always show up in the face with nothing to show.
Yeah.
You know? So the trick for me is build that MVP, you know? Get that MVP out. Keep on working on it that it's so solid that if you take it to 10,000 more people, it still works the same way, you know, without any weird surprises, you know? And then you will definitely attract the right people to join you. Be it investor, advisor, team members, because I think co-founders are as equally important as an investor, you know?
Yeah, thanks a lot. And to add on to that, I think when you're building over time and building traction, that's really critical, because and then having those conversations. So even going to investors as opposed to like, hey, I'm looking for money, it's more like, I'm working on this. What's your feedback on this? And they'll be like, oh, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? So one of like the VCs I really like, he doesn't like VCs. You know, Kosla from Silicon Valley says like a lot of times like a lot of VCs don't actually add value, and then a lot of other people have said like a lot of VCs would burn, you know, like a lot of companies get VC funding and then they fail terribly because it gets like structured in such a way that it tells we win, heads you lose.
Exactly. You know, just also extending on that, like how I always see it is that every time you start something new, you start at 50%, right? Your efforts dictate if you're going to 60 or going to 40, right?
Yeah.
So the more you work on the product, the more investable you actually become.
Yeah.
Because you're getting traction, you're getting feedback from customers, you're iterating, getting a solid product, and therefore you're getting closer to 100. That when any investor, even an institutional fund, when they look at you, like this guy needs the money. That's the only thing he needs.
Absolutely.
Other than that, he's growing and, you know, like crazy rate.
Yeah.
You know, the more you go out with that building the product, you actually in the 40s, in the 30s, you know, because in the time you're not working, you actually using the time to build, to be smiling at these guys.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, trying to convince them that you're the best thing after sliced bread. And they've had that conversation a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people have been
Exactly.
claiming that.
Exactly, and to add to that, then it's like, but have conversations with VCs because there are some very good VCs. But have conversations with investors and all different types, even when you're not trying to raise money, because what it does is that they help you think about your business differently. Because a lot of times when you're using your personal money, your wife's money, you know, you're not thinking about it as an investment. It's really, it's money. You know, and then you just keep burning it. If you look at how much money you've actually used over the years, you would have actually been better in a job. You know, as it's true. Statistically, people create more wealth being employed for their families. And then a lot of entrepreneurs burn a lot of cash because of this method of you building something and hope, and then without talking to anybody, and you spend so much money, then you launch, and then nobody uses it. So minimize that by doing the customer interviews, talking to people, and then getting people's feedback very quickly, build an MVP, and then adding into what Aubrey has said, then when you're talking to investors, they ask you, how big is this market? How much have you done? All of that, all those questions are saying, are you making money? Are you going to make more money? Those are the questions to answer. If you're not making money, you don't have a business.
True.
So, again, don't get too attached to wonderful ideas and buzzwords. A business is really like what you're selling as a kid. What I was selling as a kid, when I was selling sweets, I had a business because I was making money. Like that.
You know.
So, I think in closing, I'd encourage us, like we have more conversations and then we keep working to build our startups. And entrepreneurship is hard, but it gets easier when we're talking together as entrepreneurs. And then we don't see that we're not crazy, actually. We hang out with other crazy people, but we get feedback. Because sometimes you can just be crazy and you're burning cash.
Yeah, like we're crazy normal.
Exactly. We're crazy normal as entrepreneurs. So thank you very much, Aubrey. Big hand for everyone.